We will be getting started very shortly. So sit back, relax. There's handouts to download, so make sure you check that out. I will talk about that in just a second. If you have any questions throughout, there is a questions section over here, questions panel, as always. Make sure to ask the questions. I will have plenty of time at the end to answer any questions about Photoshop or any Adobe products in general. So again, use the questions section if you need extra or have a question to let me know. I'll just have to reorganize something here. Can anybody double check with me through the questions panel? Can you guys hear me okay, or am I breaking up? It seems like I have some internet issues, so I want to make sure talking wise. A little spotty, but I can hear you just fine. Okay, well, if you guys catch on where I'll keep it, if it goes off and on a little spotty, let me know at the end or sometime and it's distracting, I might have to switch to my phone. So if I do that, then I'll just pause and we'll just switch to it. I'm seeing up here on my side of things that it is a little spotty at times. So I don't know what I can do on that unless I can call in on my phone. So just something your mind with. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. And let me open up, let me get everything sharing here. And today, just a little bit about what I've been doing for the last few months. I've been doing a lot of special effects Photoshop tutorials and just going in trying to showcase a variety of things that will help you enhance working with Photoshop, to help brainstorm. What I've been trying to do is to showcase a variety of tips that you can use and shortcuts that you can go back and use in any of your design. Now, one of the things that as we're working with this, I tried to make it on a short, quick webinar, so that way people can take their time, come in. If they're at lunch, if they want to review the recording, they can do so. So that's why it's 30 minutes. I try to go a couple different scenarios of working with different forms and so forth. If you have not attended any of the other previous webinars, in the handout section, I have links to those recordings. So definitely check that out. I also have in the handout section the PDF, the slide presentation for today, and then a Word document that has a link to that will showcase if you want to utilize these graphics here to go along with any of the exercises that we're working with. So that is something that if you want to, I always encourage you to go find images yourself or to take photographs and then manipulate them yourself. So I had a couple things that a lot of people were asking about that I did not include in the presentation. So I want to actually bring it up right now and kind of talk about it. And what we're doing is we're going to be talking a little bit more about type today and then adding some special effects to that. So one of the things that as I work with here, I'm going to go back. And I had an email from a student, I'm not sure if they're in the class right now, and they wanted a little bit more information. So that's the reason why I added this at the very last moment, and then I'll get into my tutorial and so forth. When you're placing in text onto an image, you know, a lot of times, like when you're creating a composite, you got to make sure that it's readable. So what I want to do here is I want to take my type tool. I have it set as red. And typically, you know, when you're working with any type of type, and especially on top of an image, you really want to have a bold type of font. So a sans serif font usually works the best. And then what I want to do is I'm going to type in my text. I'm going to move it over. Now, what's the beauty of this is that, first of all, when you move this over into this text is really hard to read. Okay, if I bring it down here, it's really hard to read. Now, it's easy up here because background, but when we put it over top, it is just too hard to read itself. So when you work with special type effects, you got to learn working with layer styles. You got to start working with that. And one of the things I do as well is I'm going to do a Control T, Command T on the Mac, and I'm going to resize this just a little bit. A lot of students don't know that you can resize the type with the transform command. So you don't have to go up and change the font size. You can use the Control T, Command T, and this is just going up to edit free transform. And then what I do here is you got to accept the answer. You got to accept that transformation. So again, what's the beauty of this? If you're trying to fit type in a certain area, it makes your life easier. Two things that I would do when I'm putting text on top of an image. One of the things I'm either going to do is I'm going to either add like an outer glow, I'm going to add a stroke, I'm going to add a shadow to help make it stand out. So one of the ones I'm probably going to do here is I'm going to go down here to layer style and a stroke. Here you can, if I move the properties around, you can see the text there. I can change the size if I want to. It'll just make it a little bit thicker, but then it does make it stand out, you know. So the key here is to learn how to make that. I guarantee you this, if you go to Walmart one of these days and you look at the magazines that are there, look at the titles, and you're going to find that a stroke has probably been added around a lot of the titles. So it's just a simple thing that you can do. I have it outside the position. If you go inside, it looks weird. It's going to make it skinnier, so I usually stay outside for that purpose. And again, when you work with layer styles, it's non-destructive. Keep that in the back of your mind. It's non-destructive, and that's what you want. Now, what's the beauty of something like this then? So for example, if I move it around, you can see that the text is a little bit easier to read no matter where you place it. Now, if I put it up here, I might not have a stroke. I might have more of a darker stroke. So just adding a simple stroke. Marie asks, what's a non-destructive? Well, non-destructive is it does not affect, like and when I teach a class in person, I say, okay, if I come up and I punch you in the eye, I get a black eye, right? Okay, well, non-destructive is as I punch you on a layer and I don't actually affect you. I don't get that black eye. I create that black eye on a different layer. And so if I don't want it, I just delete that layer and it's gone. Okay, so that's what a layer style is. Down here, if you look at your layers panel, it's a layer protection. That is correct. See how it says stroke? I can hide it and reveal it, and it doesn't destroy the text. It just applies the effect to it. So now I'm going to go back in, and I'm just going to go in and add another layer style. I'm going to use as a drop shadow. And again, depending on how you work, shadow is going to make it stand out. You can add a white stroke with it, drop shadow. That's also going to make it stand out as well. You have the options to change the distance, the size. Most of the time I want a hard edge shadow if I'm going to have it on top of the image, and that's where the size is. If I make the size larger, it's going to make it more blurry. So that is something to watch out for. Now, a lot of times what's interesting here is once you have this, see over here in layer styles, it automatically adds it as independent effects. And then again, if I don't like it, I can double click on it to modify it, That's why it's non-destructive, is I can modify and make those changes. One of the other things I like to do here is I like to go up to edit, I'm sorry, not edit, layer, layer style, and I'll create layers. What this will do is this will open up and this will actually put the drop shadow on its own layer. Put the drop shadow and it'll put the stroke on its own layer. So you can modify that different. And so what I like to do is then, for example, I will go in and with the shadow, I might go up to edit transform. I'm going to flip it vertical. Okay. And I'm going to move it down. And you see what I'm doing is I'm creating a reflection of that. Okay. And then, you know, what you can do here, you know, just it makes it interesting. You can always go up to edit, transform, distort it. Move these handles over. Create a different illusion. So what's really important when you start adding styles is that you can actually create them and put them on its own layers and then or not adversely, but have an effect on it. And then what I like to do is I'll add a layer style, or I'm sorry, and then I'll hide part of the shadow gets away from the text, it should disappear. So what I'll do is I'll use my gradient tool and I'll drag downward. So it gets, as farther it gets away, it automatically is going to disappear. So one of the things I wanted you to learn about this, it's not, and I didn't talk about in the presentation because I had a student ask about this, is that layer styles become important when you're adding text on top of an image, when you're creating a composite. One of the useful ones is a stroke and a drop shadow. Then I want you to understand is that you can actually manipulate it even more by forcing it to its own layer. Okay, so that's the beauty of that. That's how we create cast shadows. You know, we put the shadow on its own layer and then we distort it. We use the transform commands to make that change. So I mean, we can, you know, you can go back and, you know, with layer styles, like for example, I add that stroke again to this. Okay, what I can do here is I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm going to drag this down to my new layer icon, duplicate it. Then I'm going to click on the bottom layer. I'm going to go up to edit, transform, flip vertical. Going to move it down. Oops. And both of them didn't come down, but I'll adjust it. But see, I'm creating a reflection. I might change the opacity some, so it looks like it's in the water. Then, you know, what's nice about this, again, I can add a mask. As it gets farther away, I take my gradient tool. Actually, yeah. A little weird with that because of the way the effects is, so I'm gonna have to make some adjustments. But, you know, that's the fun part. Once you start learning some of the basics, then you can do whatever you want. So, okay, let's move on. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up another image here, see some different effects, and you're going to see some of the stuff that, you know, is incorporating a couple things we've talked about already. So I'm going to take an image of the fire, and you can find anything in stock photos. You can, a lot of the Art Institute library, you can automatically go in and use the photos in the Art Institute library. So you can actually create composites. Just make sure you cite your sources for that purpose. I always encourage students to create their own photographs, so it makes it easier to work with. So what I did is I found a stock photo that has some fire in it. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take an image and I'm going to make this into a pattern. And I don't need to select anything. I'm just going to go up to edit, define pattern. You give it a name. and it creates a pattern. Now, if you know anything about patterns, a pattern is automatically, you can fill it anything with a pattern, and it just basically repeats. So watch what happens here. I'm going to create a new document here. I'm going to go up to Edit Fill. I'm going to change the contents here, not to foreground, but to a pattern. Now, by default, you have other patterns you can choose from. So let me just do a custom pattern here. See how you have the dots being, it's not a whole list of dots on your page or canvas. It's actually just a group, and then it's repeated. Okay, so what I can do here is I can then go up to Edit Fill, and I can choose the new fire one. Now I click OK, and it's going to repeat. Now, because the image is so large, the actual size. It's like if anybody does website design, it's like how you fill in with a background image on a page. Okay, so what we can do, if we wanted to, we could select an area, and we can actually define that as a pattern. A lot of people don't know you can take an image and define it as a pattern. And if I come up here and I do Edit Fill, change that pattern, see it repeats. You probably don't want this way. You probably want to do it a little bit different, and that's where the layer style comes into play. Okay, so now I got the pattern I want. So now I'm going to take my type tool. Again, when you work with certain types, you really want to work with a bold font to make it really stand out. A script font's not going to work. So I'm going to capitalize this, and I want to change this back to black to start off with. Okay, and I'm using Arial black, really large. Okay, bold, stands out. Now, not all your advertising you want something like that, but again, when you're working composites, trust me, that's where you're going to see it mostly, a bold font. Now I'm going to go in and transform this. So I'm not going to find, because I want that fire to fit up the top of my page, so I don't want to spend time trying to choose font size and so forth. So I'm just going to do a Control T, Command T on the Mac, which is your free transform command, and I'm going to resize these handles. I'm going to fit it right up here at the very top. So I can stretch this like this, go all the way down. And this is really just a very cool feature that a lot of students don't utilize. Make sure you press your Enter key to accept. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to fill that pattern that we created into the type. We do that. We use a layer style. We use pattern overlay. How many people have actually used pattern overlay? Anybody in this class? Use the pattern overlay style, layer style. A couple people say no, because you look at it and you're like, I don't know what to work with. You have to find a pattern first, and what it's going to do is it's going to fill in that shape with that pattern. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to choose that fire. You see here how that pattern is being placed inside it? Now you got to be careful on this. The scale, if it's small, I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that seam over here in the letter E and the letter F? That's because the image is being repeated. So you might not want that. So you have to adjust the scale accordingly. What's really cool about this is you can move this around, this image inside the fire. Now you can see that pattern. You see the seamless. And again, maybe you don't want that, but you have to adjust it accordingly. So what you're trying to do is get your pattern to fit exactly the way you want it. And you can go up here. All I'm doing here is I'm moving the pattern around up here in the actual composite. So I want to move the dialog box out of the way, and so I can do that. I also want to see it, so I don't want it covering because that just doesn't make sense. So you want to move it down. Okay. Now I'm going to click OK. you can see what's happening there. Now I'm going to go back up to I'm going to double click on pattern overlay, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add another layer style. Most people say that's great, you know, that pattern. What I like to do is I want to really enhance that. So I want to make like the text, the inside of the text, a little glow, like it's actually on, it's hot, it's on fire. And so what I want to do is I'm going to use the inner glow style. You could use a stroke. Now you can see here, I don't like how this pattern is set up of here where on the Z, so I'll make a change to that. But what I did here is I changed the blend mode to screen. My opacity is 100%. I have a yellow color, yellow-orange color, and I can adjust, you know, some of the other size elements I want, but it does a nice job putting that inside glow around there. Now, if I wanted to go back to the pattern overlay and take care of that E and move that around, okay, maybe I have to increase the scale. You know, that's what you, again, that's where you have to experiment. Now look, this is Marie, this is like this is okay. Now, as you saw before, Marie, you can, this pattern overlay, I have the one that's selected like here, where it was just part selected of the fire. Now you can see that you get too much of seamless, or you get too many seams, so you have to watch out for that. Okay, and that's where you would have to, maybe you scale this up to be, now it does get a little blurry, so it depends on how much detail you want. Now that gets a little bit more trickier. If you want more fire, I have other tutorials that'll just do fire. And you know, you can make flames that are flaming on top of the text as well. So yeah, this one might be the harder one to kind of incorporate what you know, if you just wanted to have fire and not the sky or tree branches for that. Probably this is not the best effect for that. Okay, so let's move on. And so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to create some text. I'm going to make some modifications to, and I'm going to actually place it onto a billboard. And the biggest thing here is that when you work with text, text is going to help enhance an image. It really grabs your attention and enhances the overall image. If it does not, it's not the right text choice. And so when you look at something, you really want it to grab attention. So if you just simple white text, black text, you know, sometimes it doesn't grab that attention, and that's where you add layer styles. Now we're going to create a billboard that's kind of going in and it's like basically kind of affecting the, you know, looking at the drug problems we have throughout the nation. And so it's called Rage. And so we're going to go in and create something like that. You animate the word fire? Yeah, I animate and do it. In Photoshop, it's a little, you can do like a GIF, animated GIF, but it's not, you know, you have more control over in a program like Animate to make something on fire, because then you want the wavy flames going up. So with that said, you want to find images that, first of all, I want to do is I want to make an image that's, you know, someone's angry and so forth. I'm going to use the anger one here, but let me open that up real quick, and then I'm going to go in and just kind of showcase something, what if you're looking for other images. So like here, this is stock photo. First thing you want to do is you're not going to utilize this whole image. So you're always going to take your crop tool and you're going to just resize the crop tool to get what you want. Okay, so in this case, I'll resize it because I just want the head. And in this case, angry person. Now, what if it was encourages for a student to do this, I would have the student take a photograph of someone that is angry. I would make someone like their brother or sister or their nephew, nieces, and make them feel like it's angry, and then instead of using stock photos. Now, what I'm going to do is then I'm just going to go in, add a new layer right above background, and I'm going to choose a darker red color. I'm going to fill this in with that color. Now you can't really see it, so I'm going to change the blending mode to overlay, okay, and see how you're putting, what that does is brings out the contrast. And what I'm going to do again is I'm going to actually duplicate this one more time. I'm going to take this layer 1, I'm going to drag it down to the new layer icon, and I'm really making it red. And if it's too much, I can adjust the opacity. So I want us to kind of go in and have that effect where it's anger, and we know represents red, so I'm going to incorporate that in. And so you would want to manipulate that. You want to manipulate your levels. You might go in and bring out more of the contrast. So I might go to the background layer, and I might go in, oops, not a layer mask. I might add a levels here, and I might increase this to make it darker to really make it stand out. Okay, so in this case, what I've done is we got this image, a stock photo here. And so what I want to do here is I want to increase the canvas. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to make this background on its own layer. So I'm going to name this, anger. Let's just name it anger. Click OK. Now it's on its own layer. Now I'm going to go up to image, canvas size. I'm going to make and change the size of this. So the first thing I want to do is I want the image of the graphic of this screaming teen on the left side. So I want to make sure I click on this left middle marker. I'm going to change the width to %, and I'm going to increase the width up to 200% because I'm creating a billboard. Remember, I'm creating billboards. I need some space over here on the right-hand side. Now I'm going to zoom out, or zoom out so I can see it. So I have all this empty space on the right-hand side. Checkerboard means it's transparent. So that is what we're looking for. Now I'm going to press the letter D as in David to go back to default colors. Type tool. Okay, I'm using that. I'm going to type in rage in uppercase. Now, I'm going to do a Control T. I'm going to make this larger. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over here in the middle. So the RNA is over in the red, G and E is over the other side. I'm going to press my Enter key to accept. Now, what I want to do to really make this stand out, and I'm probably going to change my text here, and I'm going to make some other changes. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to put it below the anger layer. I'm going to fill this in with black. Now my default color is already black for a foreground. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, Option key on the Mac, and press the delete. Okay. Now, as you can see here, you're not seeing my text. So I'm going to come up. I'm going to change the color to white. So what I'm doing is I'm straddling and I'm creating symmetry here. So I'm putting the G and E. Now, if this was like a 5-letter word, that would not work as well. I like symmetrical. So 4-letter word, 2 on one side, 2 on the other. So that's something. The other thing I might have to do here is I might take my type tool. I'm going to click before the R and the A. When you increase the font size of certain text, the text between 2 letters here are really close together, the R and the A. Compared to like G and E, there's not that much space. So I'm going to go up to the window character. I'm going to increase the kerning. This would be the kerning. The kerning between 2 characters. That's the space. So let's do 15 right now. Oh, nope. Let's do 25. 50. because I want a little extra space so it makes it easier to read there. Okay. So don't forget to use your character panel, and when you make text a little bit larger, it does get a little bit. Now I'm going to distress this text. I'm going to distress this text, and when I'm going to do this, I'm going to create a layer style here, or a layer mask. So I'm going to come in here to my layer. I'm going to come down and add a layer mask. Layer mask hides and reveals what's on that layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a textured brush, and I'm going to open up another image here. So what I'm going to do here is I want to use this as a brush. So just like you define a pattern, we can define our own brush. And I'm going to go up to Edit, Define Brush Preset. Now, part of the stone, or you can select the pattern. I click OK, and you can actually see my paintbrush is selected here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over and click on this one image. Now, I want to choose a medium gray color before I click. Medium gray, because again, when you work with layer mask, you're hiding and revealing. White reveals, black hides, gray is opacity. It changes a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click, and that's all I want. Just click. People drag back and forth. No, a lot of times with paintbrushes, we just click, and it creates a nice little pattern for us. So again, what I'm doing is I'm seeing some of the text come through, or the background come through. If I want to see more, I'll adjust the opacity down. And I can do that as well. So creating a brush preset that you can use, you can actually make anything. You make your face into a brush. You just have to select your edit brush preset. Now, I don't know how nice that would be, but it is something that you could do. Again, it's something that is interesting to look at. Now, let's add some type here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a text box. So I'm going to take my type tool, and most people in Photoshop, they just click. You can create a frame. So I'm going to draw a text frame right here. And I'm going to have text in there. And let me go back to my PowerPoint presentation, because I'm lazy when it comes to typing. And I'm going to copy this over. And I'm going to paste it in here. Now, I want to resize this a little bit. And it's not bad if it goes over into your other text, your other area, but I want to kind of have the dividing, you know, a little extra spacing. You know, your child says there's a monster in the house, could help for both your sakes. You know, so you put some text in there, you put it over here on the right hand side. You know, change the lettering, make sure it's bold enough so you can read it, you know, for that purpose. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go in, I'm going to go up to layer, I'm going to merge it or flatten it. You can flatten it as well. I'm going to put this all in one image. Okay. Now I'm going to open up the billboard. Okay. And then I'm going to take this layer. Now you might want to save it before you do this. Before you flatten it, I always have the original saved as a PSD with layers, because if you flatten it, you can't get back to the layers. So you might have two copies of this, one that's flattened, one with layers. So keep that in the back of your mind. I'm going to drag this up into this new image. Large, because it's not fitting perfectly. So I'm going to go do a Control-T. That's your edit transform, Command-T on the Mac. First thing I'm going to do is go up to my options bar. I'm going to change the width to 50%, and I'm going to click on the proportional where it says maintain aspect ratio. Now it gets a little bit smaller, and it could, well, let's just go in, let's make it 30%. There we go. I'm going to apply my transformation. Now I'm going to fit this graphic to the billboard. You can't see the billboard. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the opacity down. Now you can see the billboard. Okay, that's the easy trick. Now I'm just going to go up to Edit, Transform, and use Distort. This is the easy part. Take the corners and link it or match it up to the corners of the billboard. Now you can create some interesting perspective. Let me move this over just a little bit so I can resize this. There we go. Because it's going outside my canvas, I just moving it over. What I'm doing here is I'm just resizing this down just like that. And I'm going and snapping to the corners. You can put ruler guides if you want it in. I'm going to press my Enter key to accept that distortion. I'm going to change the opacity back up to 100%. And now you got your billboard. Now granted, the color, the overall color might not match with the sky and that, but it is something that you can do with anything. So for example, really, if you open up any type of billboard, now the problem we have here is we have these lights in play, okay? So we would have to delete those lights or do something to it, but I could go in so take this graphic over to here. Now, again, notice it's not going the right way, so I just go up to Edit, Distort. Ooh, this is going to get weird. And actually, you probably want to start with your original image, but you get the idea. Then I could spend some time trying to make sure it matches the overall color scheme, the contrast of the sky and so forth. But again, it's very simple to fit something in. I mean, this concept here, we could do this concept for anything. If we have a TV monitor, I don't know if I have one. Here. Yeah, but anything like a TV monitor or cell phone, you can put stuff right inside it. Use the distort command to distort the graphic to fit right in. That's the cool part. Okay, I went over a little bit because I had a little extra in to help based on some questions that a student asked before. So I did go a little bit over. I apologize. I usually don't. I try to get done at 12:30. So hopefully you learned some new tricks. The key here is to have fun. So the thing is once you start one thing, you just start thinking how you want to place things in. So I hope I give you some hints when it comes to choosing fonts for that. As certain things people said before, like fire, there's so many different fire effects. And really, for you, Maria, you were talking about fire. If you go and you type in, like, for example, Photoshop tutorials type, I'm going to assume that you want something like this with just like the flames coming up. So that's a whole different type of tutorial, of going in. And here's one with like these, making it feel like it's on fire. I tried to incorporate a lot of stuff from the image itself because I wanted to relate to the images. And so that's why I show you that. It's kind of like a clipping mask is what we call a clipping mask. So here they have kind of go through the step by process. You could try this out, if you want something like this. I'll put this in the chat window for you. You can paste that link over. It's in the chat window. There's a link there for that tutorial. You can try it out, see if that works for you. Okay. And the type, just remember, it should always enhance your design. So you got to choose the right fonts. And here's the one thing I like. I mean, you got the web fonts that you can go through Adobe. I still like going to dafont.com, and I like to download fonts. So if I'm looking for a certain font, you know, I can search for it. You can see the different styles here. You know, this script font I probably avoid if I'm doing special effects, because I know it's not going to work. Got to have something really bold for it. But, you know, for example, here's a horror font. You know, and these are just fonts that you can download. And so that's half the battle, trying to find those fonts. Or if you're like in Photoshop, or in, you know, I use Adobe Muse, but if you go in, work with characters, you got all these different font choices anyways. So you have an option also to work with the type kit, and the type kit you can download fonts from Adobe as well. So any questions? I'm just continue talking. I'm just waiting to see if there's any other questions coming up. Any questions about Photoshop in general or anything? Okay, well, if there's no questions, you're free to go. You should get you know, the questions, I mean, this has all been recorded, so the link that you got to this class is the link that you'll see the recording. The recording will go live within an hour, so if you have to go back and review it, that is our to do. I don't know when my next session is going to be. I have some conflicts in May, so my next Photoshop tutorial training might not be till the end of May. So keep that in the back of your mind if you're looking for it. I don't have anything planned or scheduled right now because of some conflicts. So, but it should come back in the hopefully by the end of May. I might throw something in the beginning of May, but I do have some things that are going on, so I have to watch out for that. And then we'll come back and have some summer stuff. I have some other tutorials I'm looking at. As you go in and you want something covered or some type of idea, you can always email me. I might be able to find something that I can bring into a presentation. So keep that in the back of your mind. I just bought another book in Photoshop this last weekend. It goes over, it's called How to Create Badass in Photoshop, which is kind of cool. Let's see what I can bring in. So everybody have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to everybody later. I will try to with a schedule. Email address is at the end of the presentation. So if you download the presentation, the last slide. So msoliday@aii.edu. And I'll see what my schedule is. Usually I try to do noon. So I'll see if I can do one after one, but my issues I have, you know, I still have to manage all my other classes. So, and we can do, maybe I can have a couple classes here and there after that. But the good thing is that all these are recorded, so you can go back and review them. Okay, everybody have a great rest of the day.